6:30 on Monday, February 22nd, 2021, and I now call the Winton Woods regular board meeting to order. During this meeting, we ask that all attendees wear masks at all times of speaking. And with that said, our first item on the agenda is 1.02. So please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 1.03. Mr. Seymour, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Nicoletti. Dr. Nicoletti. Dr. Nicoletti.
Can you give us a thumbs up? Dr. Johnson, can you hear us? Okay, we'll take a pause to allow for technical difficulties.
Any difference changes in the lights or anything? Dr. Cupoletti, can you hear us okay?
I can't hear you.
Right, can you hear us okay, Dr. Cupoletti and Dr. Johnson?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I was on mute.
Okay, we're going to call the roll again. Dr. Cupoletti.
Here.
Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, she's on mute.
Dr. Johnson's on mute.
Got it.
She's off the mute, Mr. Seymour.
Dr. Johnson.
Present.
Mr. McGowan. Mr. Birdie.
Present.
Mrs. Rodriguez.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Seymour. The next item on the agenda is 2.01, which is a recess, and we usually take the recess because we have district honors, recognitions, and gifts, but since we don't have any tonight, unless the board sees a need for a recess, I think we can just move on to the next item, which is item number 3.01, public comments. Do we have any public comments tonight? Seeing as none, we'll move on to item 4.01, comments from the Winton Woods Teachers Association. Do we have someone from the Teachers Association here? Seeing as none, we will move on to item number 4.02 while we wait for Mrs. Shonda Ferguson to get to the podium, which is the Ohio Association of Public School Employees. Thank you, Ms. Ferguson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Madam President, Madam Vice President, board members, administrative staff, sisters and brothers of the association. Elsie would like to say how excited we are about transitioning into our new buildings, and we wish everyone a safe, just a safe transition. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 5.01, which is the approval of the minutes. Board, a motion is in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Birdie. Can I get a second?
Second.
It has been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you please call that vote?
Dr. Kubiletti,
Aye.
Dr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Birdie,
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles.
Aye. The vote passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is item 6.01, which are the treasurer's recommendation. Mr. Seymour, you have the floor for the financial report.
Sure. For the month ended in January 31st, our year-to-date revenues for the general fund are at $27.6 million. For our month-to-date through the month of January, we received $2.4 million, $500,000 in a real estate tax advance, and $1.8 million from our state foundation funding. Our expenditures for the year-to-date are at $29.7 million, and currently that is approximately 5.4% under budget, or we're running approximately $3 million under budget. Also, I'd like to mention that for the month of January, our benefits exceed normal amounts because it's the month of January where our employees get their health savings account contributions put into their accounts for their health savings. As you know, our employees have a $6,500 deductible, of which the board contributes $3,200 towards a family plan in their health savings account.
Thank you, Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. The districts had unencumbered funds of all funds of $41.7 million. $14 million was the general fund, only $2.5 left in the building fund, and $18 million left in classroom facilities. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Board, are there any questions? With no objections being heard, let the financial statements for the month of January be submitted for audit. The next item on the agenda is 7.01, Treasurer's Investment Report for January 2021. Mr. Seymour?
Yes.
Back to you.
For the month of January, the district had $66 million invested and earned $10,000 on investments ranging from 0.09 to 0.2% interest. The general fund was around $8,600 and the building fund $1,400. And as I shared with you at our last work session, most of our building funds have transitioned into cash and cash equivalents, meaning very little interest rate right now because most of those funds are going to be due soon. So for that month of January, our interest income was $10,135.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Dr. Johnson, can you hear me now?
A little bit better. I'm having trouble hearing when it switches over from the various individuals, and my sound is up as much as it can go. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll try to speak in the mic. Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Board, a motion is in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the investment report as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Birdie.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Cupoletti. It's been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions for discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you please call the vote?
Sure. Dr. Cupoletti,
Aye.
Dr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Birdie,
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is 7.02, the resolution to request authority to interest earning from Fund 010, Classroom Facilities, to Fund 004, Building Fund. Mr. Seymour, can you please give us some more information on this?
Yes, as Mrs. Ruggles called today and asked me to briefly review why we were doing this. The interest earnings for the on the bonds from that the treasurer invests on the local funds, we're allowed to invest in certain instruments and set aside those funds. And in the Ohio School Facilities, we're only allowed to invest in what's called the Star Ohio. So currently, the funds from, and of course the funds that come from Ohio School Facilities are drawn and are not held for the long period like the funds that come from bonds. So consequently, we have accumulated a roughly 2.5 million more on local earnings than we have with the funds distributed from the state of Ohio. So as Mr. Denny and the construction people determined that there's a need to spend some of those funds, I have to get permission from the Board of Education via resolution to submit to the Ohio School Facilities that the board has approved for me to move some of those funds. And we would be moving those funds only from Fund 10, which is the facilities construction, to Fund 4, which is called the Building Fund. And we're only going to, in the next motion, we're only going to request a portion of those. And just to share a little bit with you, that interest earnings to date are approximately 2.8 million. And you have to have interest earnings equivalent to what you have earned interest on the Ohio School Facilities local portion, which is around 300. So if we would have a project where Mr. Denny needed to co-fund and the state of Ohio said, yes, we'll co-fund that with interest, we have to have those interest dollars to co-fund that. So those interest dollars will never be moved. That would be about $300,000. And then it leaves we'll leave approximately $200,000 for us to deal with at a later time, where we can always move those funds if we don't need to use them for the project to permanent improvement. So at this time, we're just asking the board to pass the resolution that was approved by Ohio School Facilities, allowing them, so they know that I had the authority from the Board of Education to make this transfer. And it's also been reviewed by our bond counsel as to the accuracy of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour, for giving us the expanded view of what the resolution is about. Board, a motion is in order.
I'd like to move to approve the resolution requesting authority to transfer interest earnings on Fund 010 Classroom Facilities as requested.
Thank you, Dr.
I'll
Cupoletti.
second that.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. It's been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you please call the vote?
Sure. Dr. Cupoletti?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is 7.03. Back to you, Mr. Seymour, to talk about the transfer of interest earnings.
Correct. You just passed the resolution to transfer the interest earnings, and at this time, we're only going to ask to transfer $500,000 from Ohio School Facilities Fund to our local building fund.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Board, a motion is in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of $500,000 interest earnings from the Fund 010 Classroom Facilities to Fund 004 Building Fund.
Second.
It has been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you please call the vote?
Dr. Cupoletti?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye. The vote passes unanimously. We'll move on to the superintendent's reports, 8.01 and 8.02.
Madam President and Board, Ms. Bray, are you ready? We've condensed the report to give you information about COVID activities so you guys could be aware of where we are.
So you're kind of muffled.
Hmm?
You're kind of muffled. And Dr. Johnson's second part.
I was trying to sound like Barry White, Mrs. Roberts. You ruined the experience for me. So
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
I
That's all right.
apologize.
I'm back.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bray.
You're welcome.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President. Good evening, Madam Vice President, board members, and Superintendent Mr. Smith. I'm here to give you the update in regards to the staff vaccination that was held on February 10th. Since then, we have not had any new positive staff cases since the first vaccination.
Excellent.
The second vaccination will happen on March 3rd. And according to the CDC, it takes approximately 2 weeks from that second dose to develop immunity. Keep in mind that second dose is a booster shot, and so there could be more reaction to the second shot according to the CDC. And keep in mind that Mr. Smith has graciously allowed the staff to have the shots done on our virtual days, which are Wednesdays, which allows that shot to kind of take effect and to see what happens, which gives us those second days, Thursday and Friday, which will be eventually virtual remote learning days for staff and students in case of any type of reaction. Makeup vaccinations are scheduled for February 25th, which are for those employees who missed the first shot. Approximately 400 Winton Woods employees actually had the opportunity to get the first shot on February 10th, which makes up about 80% of our staff who have been vaccinated with the first shot. We have approximately 27 more makeups for staff members who missed the first shot. I believe that's all I have, and that's informational. Mr. Smith, is there
Yes.
anything else?
Yes. I'd like to make a special thanks to the Teaching and Learning Department, because even though we were taking care of our employees from a safety perspective to make sure they didn't have a reaction to the vaccine, they were very, very aware about making sure that the lessons were ready for the students in the event that they did. Because if all the districts are having the same vaccine at the same time and we have people calling in, we'll have a sub problem. So we used our head to try to do something creative to keep our students moving and to keep our staff safe. So hats off to Ms. Bray, Dr. Ragland, and Dr. Martin for being on the forefront to make sure that the work was already ready for the students and the information was sent home to the parents. The other part of that is we had to do it as smoothly as we could, because as Ms. Bray mentioned, there'll be another vaccine on March 3rd. And if the 10th went well, then we hope that the March 3rd one goes as well. So we're already in a good spirit about it.
Thank you.
Yes, there were, the February 10th date went very smoothly. We heard a lot of great accolades from the staff here at Winton Woods and Hamilton County ESC, how smoothly the process went. So we are looking forward to the next one on March 3rd.
Thank you for the information, Ms. Bray, but I will tell you that the process was very smooth. Just looking at how information was given out to staff, to know what to bring, to the times that they were supposed to come, and just everything seemed like it was very smooth. And thank you also to Mr. Smith and the team for really taking that village tribe approach to ensure that everybody who needed to be vaccinated had the opportunity to get vaccinated. And as well as I see that, 225, that's a makeup time. So that really shows that there was some forward thinking and trying to ensure that the tribe is healthy.
Yes.
So I just want to say kudos to you and thank you for that information about the second one is a booster.
It's a booster shot.
Because I know that sometimes boosters can create a little bit of issues, but the forward thinking about for teaching and learning and being remote and allowing people to have the ability to recover if they have any symptoms, praying that they don't.
Correct.
But thank you all for.
Yeah, we conducted a survey with all employees, asking them about the reaction. There are 10 different versions from fever to headache to sore arm, or a variety of things. What we're going to do, Ms. Ruggles and Board, we're going to compare that data to the next one just to see how well we fared. And it should be interesting. Me and data, the more I have, the better it is. So I'd like to try to compare it to see how did we do, how did our staff do, and then the next part that we need to do is make sure that we connect with our families. How did our children fare while we were remote for those 3 days?
Yeah, the surveys, I thought that was a great way to really engage and understand what the needs of the staff will be after the first shot. So thank you and kudos to the entire team for the thinking that went into that, making sure that learning continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is 8.02, which is the facilities update. Mr. Smith, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just want to make a point that the T1 report was actually taken off for tonight so that we can have a more in-depth study about it on March 8th. So, there we go. Facilities update, Mr. Denny.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Good evening, board. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. So I have really great news tonight. We had a major milestone. Who's today, the 22nd? We had a major milestone this month at the K6 school, the brand new South Campus. We achieved what they call the TCO, which is the Temporary Certificate of Occupancy, which corresponds in the contract language with the OFCC and the builders as substantial completion. So it's a pretty great accomplishment. We're all very pleased that this has occurred. It occurred on schedule. February 9th was the date it was issued. And so we're pretty excited about that. That's not to say there aren't still items to be completed, but that's the good news. In other news, on the north side of town, at the North Campus, the new 712 building, we are proceeding toward occupancy, hopefully this week. The occupancy certificate being awarded, although the construction firm did request up until March 2nd. So that's just an update on that score in terms of schedule. When you talk about a big project like this, there's always the three major pieces to consider: cost, schedule, and scope. And so there is still scope to complete, but it's not anywhere in these construction range as much as it is in the life safety testing and permitting is what's really happening. So pretty excited about that. There's huge progress at both buildings in all facets of the construction, and really the emphasis right now is on the technology portion. You see a lot of systems being finalized: the building automation system, fire suppression system, the elevators testing, the emergency phone lines, the access control. So all of these layers of technology that apply a certain higher degree of security and safety to the building. So it's nice to see that all coming in.
Yeah, I think the most amazing part is when all of these things get fired up at the same time. Should be interesting.
Always.
Meaning they should all work without any problems.
Right. We're just going to cross our fingers and hope for the best. No, the good news is they are coming online, and they don't come on all at once, but there's a phase-in process. Ms. Hobbs and her team have been invaluable in working with the contractors to make sure that it meets our standards here in the district. We have very high standards for security with technology and with the network and things of that nature. So it's been a good process and a process that's really taken a lot of collaboration to be able to achieve. So we're getting closer, and looking forward to the staff tours coming up this week. So that'll be a great experience for our 7 through 12 teachers and staff to be able to see the new building and Mr. Smith and I and Mr. Martin and Mr. Sanker have been planning that, so we're looking forward to that as well. And that basically concludes the update. I would just remind everyone at home or anyone tuning in that you can see week-by-week updates by tuning into the website, www.wintonwoods.org, and just scroll down to the bottom in the lower right-hand corner, there's facility updates. So you can get an update. Here's my paper copy. I still do analog every now and then, but there's a digital version available online if anyone is interested. Happy to
Mr.
entertain
Denny,
any-
one other point
Yes, sir.
that I want to make. There have been numerous school districts that have built new buildings, and one of the things that they forgot to do is to update the public every month. So I appreciate your reports that you bring every month. They have been very comprehensive, and no one in the public is asking about the timeline of the building because we're giving information well in advance. In other communities, they heard about the buildings being built. They haven't heard anything until there's going to be a ceremony, and it creates a real stressful situation for the public because they wanted to have updates. So I'm glad that we stayed true to that form. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Denny. And you know, it's amazing that we didn't have as many scheduling issues that throw the projects off. And I'm glad to see, I'm assuming we're still on budget. So good, we're still on budget, and I appreciate these updates. It's been very informative. But I have a question that's, so the way that we got these buildings through, you know, being co-funded, is that still happening in the state, or has that been put on hold?
Well, there are two parts of it, and Mr. Denny can add his perspective on it. I do have other superintendent colleagues in the state, and they are very disenfranchised because of COVID and some of the other things. Trying to get a bond passed is very, very difficult. And then when you're talking about the manpower to actually work on those buildings, it's even more difficult because construction companies are all over the place. So their children need new buildings just like ours did. And they're struggling now because they're figuring out what's going to be the next part of the plan, because you guys know that when we're talking about a $110 million project and it cost almost $70 million to upgrade it, it didn't make sense. And we appreciate that the taxpayers saw it our way to make it new, because even if we upgrade it, we were not going to get any more square feet. So yes, they put some information out there, and they're a little bit sad about it, but I don't know how they could recover from that at this point.
Yeah, so
Mr.
the
D.
time, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just second what you said, Mr. Smith. Even before COVID hit, there is what they call a P listing that OFCC maintains. It's a P is for priority. And that is basically done by ranking in order from least to greatest, the property value per pupil. And so when your number comes up, the state says, okay, we're ready to co-fund you, you're due. What's happened is the wait list has gotten longer and longer and longer and longer, even before COVID hit, because of the availability of funds. So yes, the program still exists, but there's only so many dollars that the state legislature allocates per year.
Right.
And it's kind of like Mr. Smith was saying, people are sad because it was waiting, there were years and years and years behind now. So the state hasn't given any indication that the program is not going to continue, but the demand for the dollars is higher than it's ever been. And then COVID hit, which took it to a whole different level. And then you get into the dynamics Mr. Smith was mentioning, where it's just much more difficult to pass the issues necessary to raise your local share before the state will say, we'll support you. Because they won't, they're as supportive as can be, but without dollars until you pass your local share. And then they'll say, okay, you passed yours, now we'll pony up and give you additional funding.
Yeah, and what some districts are concerned about, they have the momentum to pass a bond, but the revenue may not be there.
Right.
That's the most disheartening part of all of it. Your community is ready, your students are ready, and they're saying, we don't have enough money to do this right now.
And that's kind of the reason why I asked the question, because what a blessing it was that we did get this in when we did. Because if you even think about campaigning for a bond, you can't go to door, you can't help individuals understand the importance of it. And so it's such a benefit to our students and to our community that we got it in when we got it in. So that's one of the reasons why I asked about where does it sit right now? So thank you for your forward thinking and the leadership in getting this project done. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that moves us to the superintendent's recommendations, items 9.01 through 9.02. Mr. Smith, actually, the first one is 9.01, which is a new job description for the plant operator.
Yes, in our district, we've never had a plant operator. With these sophisticated buildings, it's not the regular run-of-the-mill, turn a few screws and add a couple of drops of oil. These are very sensitive buildings that have to be computerized. When Mr. Denny and I were working on the reports for the building, initially, this building, based on how many occupants you'll have in it, it will know how many times the doors will open, how many times the toilet will flush. I mean, it's very, very sophisticated, where the building is actually a smart school, where it knows exactly how it's supposed to operate. When it's overload, sometimes what would happen, we would have a boiler issues in our original building. Engineer, plant operator, maintenance person has to come in and do something. This is a very sensitive computer, where the computers will tell us where to troubleshoot. We go right to it, and then those guys can actually tackle it. So the plant operator, buildings and grounds supervisor, this person will actually report to the business manager. They would be reporting to Mr. Denny. And the summary says, maintains the physical school plan and operates the building automation system, BAS, of the assigned school campus, its auxiliary buildings and all grounds in excellent and functional condition so that full use may be made at all times. All right. One of the things you'll see in the buildings, which is really interesting and unique, is the blinds are made inside the panes, so the blinds will never get destroyed. Building, these windows should never open. If you do, you change the whole complexion of the building from the other side. So they are that sophisticated. So we decided that the position description had to be something very entailed, where the plant operator has to be sophisticated and have all these essential skills and responsibilities in order to operate the building with fidelity.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Board, a motion is in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the job description for plant operator as presented.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Birdie and Dr. Johnson. It's been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion?
Mr. Smith, I just have one question you could possibly clarify for us. This is just the first of 2 plant operators that we will need, one for the K6 building in Green Hills?
Yes, ma'am. There will be 2 plant operators based on the information and job description that came from HR and also the business department. We are, hopefully, we believe that those people will have the essential skills. We wanted these buildings to kind of mirror each other. That's why we wanted to do them at the same time, so they have the same essential scope. And if one of the plant operators were to have some problems, the other one could assist. So we're going to be able to transfer that information and not have 4 and 5 people. It will be 2 plant operators.
Good, thank you.
Dr. Cupoletti has something, but I don't know if we can hear him.
No, I had the same question, but I do have an ancillary question. Will the dashboard be located at each school respectively? So there'll be one dashboard at the K through 6 and another at 7 through 12? Or will it be centralized?
I believe they're independent, Mr. Denny, are they?
They have the ability, right now they'll be separate, but we have the infrastructure in place later to incorporate them together with the
Very good.
district-wide dashboard, in addition to the future site.
Absolutely, okay. Dr. Yeah, Mr. Denny, go to the mic. Dr. Cupoletti, you didn't hear his overview, but he's going to tell you how they're going to operate.
Yeah, good evening, Dr. Cupoletti. Thanks for the question. So yeah, the answer to your question is they are individual now. So there's a dashboard connected for each building. The way the state funds it, they're separate projects. But at the district level, what we'd like to do is have a unified dashboard infrastructure in place. So we have purchased that, and it is ready to receive both of these different dashboards and building control systems, in addition to the future preschool village, which we would also like under the same building system or building automation controls umbrella. So right now they're separated, but as a future state, we intend to have them integrated.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, sir.
Board members, are there any additional questions? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you please call the vote?
Dr. Cupoletti?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Robles?
Aye. The next item on the agenda is 9.02, personnel schedules. Back to you, Mr. Smith.
Yes, Madam President and Board, the recommendation is to approve the personnel schedules as presented. Schedule A, resignations. Schedule B, personnel certificated only. Schedule C, personnel employment. Schedule D, personnel certificated as well as uncertificated staff. Schedule E, leaves, and Schedule M, termination.
Board, a motion is in order to approve schedules A, B, C, D, and E,
And M.
and M. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel schedules as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Birdie.
I can second that.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. It has been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you please call the vote?
Dr. Cupoletti?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Robles?
Aye. The vote passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda are the Board of Education reports, and it's 10.01, the legislative reports. And I'll go ahead and do that report. I wanted the board to be aware of the following topics to be aware of, which is House Bill 67. In this bill, the House wants to work with superintendents to try and waive the federal testing requirements or mandates for school. There's a large contingent of support from superintendents, approximately 95% of the superintendents who agree with this waiver because they feel as if they know what's best for students and they're in the best position to figure out what types of adjustments or academic support that they will need. However, in this bill, in opposition to this bill is the Senate, who is pushing to mandate federal assessments despite the superintendent's input. I don't know, Mr. Smith, if you want to add anything else to that?
Yes, Madam President and Board, the Teaching and Learning Department they've been all over this. And what they've talked about is having a individualized education plan for every student so we know exactly where they stand. Again, the House is saying, we believe it, we support it. 95% of the superintendents in the state of Ohio says students have been over-tested. And what the Teaching and Learning Department at Winton Woods specifically want to do is spend some of that testing time as instruction time so that we can figure out where the gaps and where the deficiencies are in our students' learning.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next one is House Bill 34. Some of you may know Mrs. Kathy Ingram. She's sponsoring this bill. And this bill mandates that school districts have 5 days to transfer a student's record once they've transferred out to another district. I think we've had some discussion on this with Mr. Smith about records and the delay of records and parochial schools that might hold students' information. However, this bill only targets public schools, and in my opinion, it could use some more support to cover all schools to ensure that students' records are transferred in a timely manner. Students are not, there's a lot of things that goes into student success, and it matters because students are not in control not necessarily in control of where they attend school, when they transfer schools, or whether or not their fees are paid. But it's very important that when they transfer to another school, that school district is in position or to be able to support that student and make sure that they have the appropriate support, academic support needed. So that is House Bill 34. House Bill 66 is another one, which is the review of property tax exemptions. We all know this is where companies are asking for a reduction in taxes, but this bill looks at how does this reduction in taxes impact schools. I think this is a very critical look at, sometimes we have decisions that are made and they have unintended consequences on school districts, even including giving tax abatements. So building those partnerships with local communities, as well as being aware of how certain things that are happening, like companies who are trying to get tax exempt, how does it impact our school district? So we want to make sure that we stay aware of that. And House Bill 1, which is funding, the Fair Funding Plan, this is related to the Cup-Patterson information. So, and it attempts to get at a fair funding model. So stay tuned. We've been in tune for a fair funding model forever. So the conversation goes on and on. And then Senate Bill 23 is one of interest of mine because I really think that sometimes the attention that are given to our bus drivers and the safety of our children when cars are passing by, and it really puts our children at risk. So this bill allows video to be used in a court of law for vehicles passing school buses when lights are on, or any other violation that puts our students in danger. So that is 5, maybe 6 issues for the legislative report. Mr. Smith, I want to see if you have anything else to add to these.
No, I mean, if you look at some of the reports, and Ms. Ruggles, you did a thorough job. Some of these reports are like 520 pages long.
Yes.
And so I know you read every page, so I appreciate it very much. That we needed to make sure we had the right context when we're talking about Senate bill and House bill and how these things really affect students' performance. Again, we have been really pushing the needle about testing, and hopefully the senators are listening to us, knowing that we're the experts in the area of education and educating our youth, that we understand that you're oversaturating kids at this point, especially when you look at the social and emotional piece of COVID, and now you're actually bringing me back. Some of these kids have not been in school at all. They've never seen a teacher. And when we have this opportunity to bring kids back, you look at a kindergarten and preschool kid, he's never been in his building. A middle schooler has never been in that middle school. And now you're going to bring me back and give me more tests. And I think we have a sufficient amount of data to know how our kids are doing academically. Now we need to do something very intentional about instructing them.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next item on the agenda is 10.02, Mr. Birdie. That is the Great Oaks Career and Technical Center report. You have the floor.
For the Great Oaks report, I did send out an email to my fellow board members, Mr. Smith, Mr. Seymour. It included the board highlights from the February meeting, some messages from Mr. Harry Snyder, as well as the legislative reports and the diversity and unity report. Before our next meeting in March, they are going to bring in a couple of speakers, Dr. Ernst from Thomas More and Dr. Coates from Miami University, to have a discussion with board members about implicit bias. And then that's one of the more important things going on. And then the spotlight on student reports is recognizes Shauna Allen from Winton Woods, who is in the dental assisting program at Scarlet Oaks, and she received the weekly Scarlet Citizenship Award. So, and that concludes my report.
I am actually happy that Scarlet is working on the implicit bias piece, because they get a diversity of kids. We went through our process several years ago, and we're going to retool ourselves with woven traditions, because we need to talk about where are the implicit bias that people really don't see to be real things that are staring people in the face. And then how do we make sure that we have a diverse population of learners and also supporters so that we can move our district in the right direction and not worry about racial undertones.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Does that conclude your?
Yes.
Okay.
Concludes my report.
The next item on the agenda is 11.01, Board of Education motions and recommendations. Board, are there any motions or recommendations at this time? Seeing as none, we'll move on to item 12.01, which is comments from the members of the Board of Education and Superintendent. I think I'm going to switch it up a little bit today, and let's start with Dr. Johnson.
Yes, there's just two things, Madam President, that I just wanted to bring to light. Again, to thank our community for all the things that they do with regards to the support of the district, and to thank the teaching and learning staff who put together the university event, and to remind all students that if you are thinking about going to school, take advantage of those kinds of events and fill out the FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A, it's free application for federal student aid. And this is really important because I'm on the scholarship committee at the college where I work, and if they don't fill out the FAFSA, we can't even consider them. So, you know, it's just the university event that the district does. I know they talk about that, but I'm always about how you're going to pay for it even if you want to go. So just to thank those people for putting on that event. Also, just keeping in mind, and we've said it time and time, and it is always kind of a ringing, resounding thing that comes over and over, but during this time of COVID-19, we can't thank enough the janitors, the people who clean our buildings, the people who take care of our the space for our students to sit in, Mr. Smith and the directors of teaching and learning and the executive team, and Mr. Seymour, just to say thank you that you keep us informed through email and the text messages and the on-calls of things that are going on in the district. It's not as peaceful in some other districts. I thank this board that back in August that we had the forethought or July actually of 2020 to vote for 3 different plans to be possibly implemented, and that gave the teaching and learning team the flexibility that they needed to move when and pivot how they needed to pivot. So those were the 3 things that were on my mind to say tonight. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Mr. Birdie?
As always, thank you to the teachers, the staff, the parents, students, our administration, IT, finance, everybody involved. I know this has been a very trying year and a half or so almost with COVID, remote learning. You've got new buildings coming up. Thank you to the community for what they did at the time that they did it so that we could get these new buildings in place when we did, because to Mrs. Ragos' point, it wouldn't be happening if we had not done it, I don't think, at the time that we did it. Looking forward to the ribbon cutting ceremony, looking forward to the vaccines being widely distributed so we can get something close to normal. And, you know, everybody stay safe, stay healthy, wear a mask, social distance, and wash your hands. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Birdie. Mr. Seymour?
Thank you.
Nothing, okay. Dr. Cupoletti? I think you're on mute. Dr. Cupoletti? Okay.
Yes, I would like to express my gratitude to all of the staff, all the teachers, all the custodians and bus drivers, the administrators, the teaching and learning professionals for getting us to the point where we can see the light at the end of the tunnel because of the vaccinations. If all of the work that they did hadn't occurred, we would be in a mess. But I can see that within a month or two, we're going to be very close to being back to normal in terms of what we're able to deliver to the students. So saying I'm grateful is an understatement. I'm amazed, and I'm thankful, and I'm happy, and that goes also for even Mr. Smith, who sort of orchestrated and made sure that everything happened when it had to happen. And so all I can say is thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope that I know that the students and parents have been well served by the work that's gone on.
Thank you, Dr. Cupoletti. And I think I'm going to go next, and I concur with everything that has been said so far. I can't say enough how much I appreciate Mr. Smith's leadership with his team to make sure that the business at hand continues, and it's very intentional in making sure that everyone is on point. And I'm sure, you know, it's been kind of tough, and people have been pressed to try and get through. I will add to Dr. Cupoletti, I am amazed, but I am extremely proud to be a part of this team that thinks so highly of the students and the staff that we serve. But I have a couple things that I'll quickly go through. I'm looking forward to a meeting with our partners in Springfield Township to continue to identify partnership opportunities. I've reached out to Springfield Township, and Mr. Smith and Mr. McGowan and I will set up some time. We met with them near the end of last year, and they wanted to get back together. So just wanted to also remind board members to reach out to your political jurisdictions. And we also had a great quarterly meeting with our Mercy's partners, Mr. Smith and I, with Justin Kruger and his team. We discussed how do we continue and strengthen our partnerships, and we're very blessed to have a partner like Mercy Hospital on our team, really especially during this time of COVID, to have that level of resource. I know that Mr. Smith is meeting with all the state individuals, but to really have a partner in our backyard who's really concerned about how we're doing with COVID and expanding different opportunities. I know that in the past we've had the Explorers program. It's been put on hold for right now due to COVID, but they're looking for it to come back. And maybe Mr. Smith, you can remind me of the conversation we had. They shared some numbers with us, and he said for about 4 to 5 months the hospital was operating at 85% hospitalization, and currently they're down to about 1/3 of that number. So we are going in the right direction, and we're glad that they continue to partner with us. Oh, and also I had a community member that reached out, and it's good to know that we have individual community members that want to reach out and provide resources to our students. Mr. Smith, I'll pass that email on to you so you can see how to deal with that. So thank you, Mrs. Watts, for your contribution. And that said, I'm going to move that on to Mr. Smith, so you can, if you have any questions or any comments.
Yes, Madam President. Dr. Johnson, you hit on something very, very huge with the FAFSA. The look further down the road, the Ohio Department of Education is attempting to make completing the FAFSA form for seniors a requirement, meaning you will not get a diploma unless you fill out the FAFSA form. So stay tuned to that. We'll see how that works out. And it's really not trying to push every student to college. It's saying that, hey, you're missing some opportunities that you don't even know about. Fill out the form and you may be pleasantly surprised of what may come your way. I'm actually a supporter of it because I think that students need to know that there are other avenues, and by completing the form, you may say, hey, maybe this is a dream come true for me. So I'm happy that the Ohio Department of Education has stepped up saying this might be a good attribute for young people.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any other comments, anything that anyone else wants to, board members or Mr. Seymour? I know you're awful talkative over there if you wanted to add something.
He's just waiting for his ribbon cutting ceremony, Mrs.
Like we all are.
Right.
5 minutes?
Okay.
Yes, he does.
The next item on the agenda is 13.01, which is a motion to go into executive session. And board, there is not a need for executive session tonight. So with that, we'll move on to 14.01, which is adjournment. If there's nothing else, I'd like to thank our Waycross partners and Mrs. Rhonda Hobbs for your flexibility in supporting our blended meeting format. With that said, I will call the Winton Woods City School District Board of Education regular meeting on Monday, February 22nd, 2021 adjourned. Thank you.
Ms. Ruggles, before we adjourn, we have actually 2 guests in the audience.
Oh.
And they're working on their certification. And I've seen them sit down and take copious notes. Those pens have been working the full time. One just kind of had a spark come out of it because she's writing so much. But we really appreciate guests, and you guys have been part of who we are for a while. And anything that we can lend ourselves to do to help you get to the next level, we would be more than happy to do.
Can we have your names? Morgan Chapman. Hi, Morgan.
Tamika White.
Hi, Tamika. Okay, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, good night, stay healthy, and stay safe.
Right.
Thank